to produce the food that we enjoy.
Yeah.
It is passed down right on down the line. Unfortunately, the producer, though, is not able to recapture a lot of those input costs as they go up.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time, but you've shared so much with us today that I think is just to get people aware of what's going on with the farm industry in Alabama, and we appreciate all the information that you're sharing with us on today.
My pleasure.
We appreciate that. We do thank you for joining us this week on Joy in Our Town. We'll be right back here at the same time next week, so be with us then. See you. Then we're going to talk about the difference in adoptive families and non-adoptive families.
Okay.
You know, if they're... Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Joy in Our Town. I'm Aaron Motley, and we are here today with another exciting program and an exciting guest to talk to you about families on the first portion of our program. We have with us Meredith Adams, and she is the leader with or a team leader, actually, with the Alabama Post-Adoptive Connection, and she's going to talk to us today about some of the challenges that adoptive parents are facing and some other things dealing with adoptive and foster parents, and we thank you for being with us on today's
Thank you for
program.
having me. Thank you.
And these are some unique families, adoptive families and families that have foster children. And I'd like you to start off by talking to us about some of the challenges that many of the parents do face if they are preparing to adopt a child in Alabama. What's going on in the programs that you are dealing with?
Well, a lot of the families that we see, they do have foster and adoptive children in their home, and any child that is in foster care or has been adopted has experienced some type of loss, or else they would not be in your home. Mm-hmm. They would still be in the home with their birth family. So
the challenge really would be in just raising a unique type of child who has experienced a loss already.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us a little about that.
These children are going through what's called the grieving cycle.
Okay.
And there are 5 different stages to that, and all of these children are in some stage of that grief and loss cycle, mm-hmm. which means that these children can express some unwarranted behavior sometimes. Mm-hmm. They can have some difficult challenges in their life, acting out behaviors, difficulty with dealing with the fact that they are adopted.
Mm-hmm. Does it matter the age of the child, or do you find that the children are dealing with the grief process no matter how young they are or how old they are?
Usually we see, like, let's take for instance an infant. If an infant comes into your home, usually you will not see these drastic issues until they're older, mm-hmm. until they're going through that teenage identity crisis, figuring out who they are and where mm-hmm. they came from. Mm-hmm. Usually when they're younger, it's not as big of a concern as later on in life when they start to deal with that identity issue.
Mm-hmm. All right. So are there many people out there right now who are looking for children to either adopt or bring into their homes as a foster child?
Yes, we actually, in our newsletter that we send out, we put a page in there about children that are eligible for adoption, and we get phone calls all the time. Hey, we want to adopt this child. When you put information about children in a newsletter and people read about that, their heart just goes out to these children because they're so wonderful. They have such wonderful attributes, and the people read about that, and they call us and they say, we want to adopt this child. And sometimes they already have 6 children in their home. They're already a foster parent and have so many kids, but their heart just goes out to these kids.
Yeah, I was about to ask, what are some of the reasons why you find so many people wanting to adopt or bring foster children into their homes? You said that one of the reasons is that they see them and their heart just goes out for them. That's one of the reasons. Are there others?
Oh, children are always needing a home. So, and there's definitely children in our state that need a permanent family. There's lots of children in foster care right now as we speak. And of course, a lot of adoptions are occurring now internationally.
Yes.
So there's a lot of children that are in other countries that are trying to find a family here in the U.S. to live and have a wonderful life here in the United States. So we see a lot of international adoptions as well as children adopted through the foster care system, through DHR.
Okay. And is the process pretty quick, or do parents sometimes have a long waiting period?
It is not a fast process. There is quite a bit of background work that has to go into it. Each person, before they can adopt, they have to go through the clearance process. You have to have a CAN report, have to have fingerprints done, and background checks. There's a home study that has to occur, and it takes a while to file the paperwork. And it depends on which type of adoption you do, be it private or through a public agency or international. It completely depends on which type of adoption you're going through as to how long the process will take. But it is very lengthy. It's not fast at all.
Well, that's for obvious reasons, and we can understand that. And so, and that's a good thing, really, so that you can make sure that you get children into a good, safe home. Once they have been placed, then do you find that most of them are always a perfect match, or do they come across some situations where they just don't work out?
That can happen. Unfortunately, we are seeing a rise with international adoptions with those disrupting.
I see.
That has started to become a little bit more apparent in the research that's been done. A lot of times, though, the domestic adoptions, it depends on the situation with the child and the match with the parents. Not every time is perfect, but it is definitely worked towards to make as good a match as possible. But a child is not placed in a home dependent upon the parents. A child's placed in a home because that child needs a family. So there are no other criteria that go into it except this is a family that wants a child and this child needs a home.
I see. And so now that we find that y'all are providing certain services for those parents and for those families, so that it would ease some of the pressure. First of all, let's talk about some of the pressures of raising children that are in foster care or adoptive children. What is unique about those type families? What would you say is the difference between a family that is raising an adoptive child versus having children of their own?
The difference between an adoptive or a foster child and a biological child is the fact that an adoptive or foster child has experienced some type of loss. Otherwise, they would not be in your home. They have lost the connection to their biological family. So this child is going through what's called the grief and loss cycle. And there's 5 different stages to that cycle, and an adoptive and foster child is in one of those 5 stages, dealing with the feelings and emotions and issues that come along with that.
Well, then that means that the parents need to be trained. They need to be taught how to deal with those issues and to be sensitive to what the children are going through. Y'all may have some tips on some things that you've discovered would be some ways to help that family to become a very successful family. Talk to us about, first of all, how do you discuss with a child if he doesn't know that he's adopted? Maybe he senses something, but what are some good ways of telling a child that he's adopted?
At APAC, Alabama Post-Adoption Connections, we advocate as soon as the child is in your home to start using that word adoption. In a perfect world, you'd have the child from infancy. And I like using infancy as my example because that way you can talk to that child since the first day you get them in the home about being adopted, and you can practice telling them their adoption story. And since that child is so young, they don't understand what you're saying. So if you mess up your story, you have plenty of time to practice and to how you're going to tell this child when they are able to understand what's going on. But it's very important that you talk to the child from day one that yes, you are adopted, this is the situation. And we have lots of children's books in our library that we loan out to plenty of adoptive parents to read to their children about being adopted. We have several educational trainings that we do that talk about grief and loss and how to tell your child that they are adopted. We have a video in our library where there's a man on there that when he was 38 years old was cleaning out his parents' things after they had both died and found his adoption certificate. He had no idea that he was adopted. And from the beginning, he was excited. He was like, oh, well, this explains a lot because his mother could never tell him a labor and delivery story or that kind of thing. But now he's dealing with the depression side of it. Why didn't they tell me? Why was I adopted in the first place? So once someone finds out that later on in life, there's nobody left for him to ask these questions to. So if the child knows from the beginning, hey, this is what happened and it's okay to talk about this, then they feel more secure in that. And I always like to say if a child knows from the beginning, hey, it's okay to talk to mom and dad about my adoption, it's going to be okay to talk to mom and dad about other things in life too.
Okay.
You want to make sure those lines of communication are open with that child from the beginning because when you get into those teenage years, it's going to be scary no matter what. So we like to advocate to keep those lines of communications open and to tell the child from the beginning, this is your adoption story and this is how badly we wanted you, and to let that child know that.
And that's a very key, isn't it, to talk about how badly we wanted you, and you have a choice to make when it comes to, well, you know, I could have chosen this one, I could have chosen that one, but we chose you, and that puts something positive into that child's mind, doesn't it?
Yes, we want to make sure that this child knows this is a positive experience. Adoption is just one more way that you can make a family. And we are a family, and you are our child, and we wanted you. We worked very hard to make sure that you got to come and live with us. So you want to make it as positive as you can while still telling the truth to the child. We want to be honest with the children at all times.
What about some things that they may face dealing with their peer groups and them asking them questions about adoption? How are children, especially now if they're in their teens and other kids around saying, you know, asking them questions about adoption and making them feel a little alienated? Do you find that that happens sometimes? And what's a good way for those kids to deal with a situation like that?
Children can be mean sometimes, unfortunately. That's the reality of growing up. I'm sure every person has a scary story from high school, especially when you have a child that's adopted, let's say transracially. If the parents look different than the child, it's going to be a lot easier for their peers to pick up on the fact, how did you get to be with those parents? So that child's going to face a lot more questions than a child that looks like their parent. And in that situation, we have, in one of our trainings, we have a lot of different scenarios where we kind of do a little role playing. Hey, what if a child says this? Well, we have comebacks for that, what we call little comebacks for the children. Let's say somebody asks a parent, are they really brother and sister? And the mom can say, well, they sure fight like they are. So we kind of like to tell people ways that you can answer questions without getting people all in your business.
Oh, it's wonderful, wonderful. And how can we say that the programs in Alabama are very successful as far as these families adjusting and moving on?
Yeah, Alabama Post-Adoption Connections, we are here to work with families after they have adopted children and while they're going through that adoption process. We also, I have several contacts with families before they start the adoption process. They kind of want to know, hey, can you give me a little bit of information about this? What can I expect? What can I look forward to? And we want to train people and educate them as much as we can. And we like to think that maybe we kind of help with the disruption aspect of it. We give parents that's an extra support system that once they do adopt, they're not going to be left out there all alone. There is somebody to call and talk to. There is a way to get information about the situation that the children are going through in their home.
And you all are assisting both those who go through private agencies as well as those who may go through the government agencies.
Yes, we are a collaborative effort between the Department of Human Resources and Children's Aid Society in Birmingham, but we serve all adoptive families in the state of Alabama, as well as foster families and the professionals that serve them. So I don't like to tell anybody no.
Okay.
So if people call and ask a question, I like to help them with that.
Yes, we're going to need your help, so give a phone number real quick before we go out.
Our local number here in Montgomery is 334-409-9477, and our statewide website is www.casapac.org.
Okay. All right. Well, we do appreciate you coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
We appreciate all that you shared with us on the program today. Well, don't go away. We'll be right back to talk about crime in the city of Montgomery, so you'll want to hear more when Joy in Our Town continues. Welcome back to this portion of Joy in Our Town. We're going to be talking about crime in Montgomery, and we have with us Captain Huey Thornton, and he is with the Public Information Office in the Montgomery Police Department. He's going to talk to us today about the latest statistics and trends in the Montgomery area involving crimes, and we appreciate you being with us on Joy in Our Town today. And I'd like to just start off by talking to you about some numbers and what are we seeing as far as the numbers of violent crimes being committed in the Montgomery area in the last couple of years and what we're seeing today and up to date.
Well, generally when you speak of violent crimes, you're talking about robberies and murders and assaults, and there has not been a significant increase. For instance, with homicides, we typically average about 28 to 31 each year, and last year we had a total of 31. This year we've had a total of 11, and last year at the same time we had 12. So there has not been a significant increase in those type crimes. Something that kind of surprised me, I haven't been in the city but about 18 years, but I was looking at some stats the other day from back in 1975. when the city of Montgomery was a lot smaller, we didn't have near as many square miles to cover as far as police are concerned, and we had a total of 52 murders that year. So that, to me, is an indication that, we're doing a good job, or a better job at least, of managing the amount of crime that we're having, because you know as well as I do, there's never anywhere you're going to find that it's going to be crime-free.
Yes, and really what you're saying is that as the population increases, then the numbers may increase, but then comparison to that size, it would still be about the same as far as percentages are concerned.
Not necessarily. I mean, I'm saying exactly opposite to
Okay.
that. Generally, you would expect that as the city grows, so would the crime rate, as far as violent crimes, in particular homicides.
All right.
But that's not the case. I mean, back in 1975, I would venture to say that we only had at least, at the most, 150,000 people here in the city of Montgomery. Today, we're in excess of 202,000, and on a daily basis, we service in the neighborhood of 350,000 citizens who come into the city to work. So there's been a tremendous swell as far as citizens are concerned, either living here or working here in the city, but that has not correlated to the crime rate, because we haven't seen the same increase there.
So in comparison to other cities, what would you say as far as Montgomery is concerned?
As far as Montgomery is concerned, I think that we do well in comparison to other cities our size. We have checked the major cities here in the state of Alabama and compared them to the city of Montgomery and our crime rate, and we were below those cities. So like I told you earlier, all crime is regrettable, but that's something that you've had since the beginning of time, and I think that we have to do our best to manage crime, and that's what we're doing.
Well, you've mentioned it before about managing the crime in Montgomery. Of course, that is the job of the police department. And what you're finding, what are you attributing this low rate to?
Well, we have a good police department, and also when you look at homicides, I mean, you can't set aside the fact that we do have better medical care. We do have availability of medical facilities as well as paramedics and things of that nature, and that attributes to some of it. But we are constantly watching crime in the city of Montgomery. Each day at the Montgomery Police Department, Chief Baylor and the staff have a meeting, and we discuss the crime activity from the day before, and we look for trends, and we try to take a proactive approach to dealing with crime. We don't want to wait until something has become a significant problem before we start trying to develop initiatives to address any one particular situation.
Okay. What part then will you say that the citizens of the city is taking in really deterring a lot of the crimes? Are you seeing that there's a good relationship between the police department and the citizens? What's going on there?
I think so. I mean, we work on a daily basis to try to develop relationships with citizens and to try to let them know that the police department is here to serve them. But we can't do it by ourselves. I mean, it takes a concerted effort by the police department and the citizens in order to rid our community of crime, or to at least keep it at a rate to where we feel safe living in our homes. And that's something that we make an effort to do through our community policing division and through the officers who work on the street. I mean, it's common knowledge around the Montgomery Police Department that Chief Baylor, who is our chief of police, will not tolerate officers who are disrespectful to citizens, who treat citizens in a manner that they should not be treated in.
Okay. Well, also talk to us about some trends then that we are seeing as far as are there certain type of crimes that you would find that more prevalent in certain areas of town or certain times of the year? What kind of trends are you seeing?
Not necessarily. There aren't certain crimes that are, specific to certain areas of town. Something that I'm sure you're well aware of, drugs. That's our number one problem. I would venture to say that up to 85% of all crime committed in the city of Montgomery somehow relates back to drugs, either someone in the pursuit of drugs, someone selling drugs, or drug dealers trying to rob each other to get their money. So that's one of our, I guess, most prevalent crimes in the city. Now, you speak of trends. Something that we're seeing a trend in is robberies perpetrated against Hispanics in the city of Montgomery. And basically the reason why this particular crime is growing is because Hispanics are known for not taking advantage of the different services that the city has to offer. And they're also known to be hard-working people who they get paid and they carry the money in their pockets. And these criminals and thugs out there who would normally be out robbing convenience stores and you know, getting a small piece of money are robbing them, and they're able to get their weekly salary and things of that nature. So they've, you know, started robbing them as opposed to robbing the stores.
Wow. Well, that is interesting, and probably something that a lot of folks never really thought about. But that is that's good to get some understanding about right there, and taking advantages of those services out there, such as the banks, may be a help for some people.
It is, and we have started a bureau at the police department. It's called our ethnic bureau, and basically their responsibility is to go out and speak with the different ethnic groups in the city, like the Koreans and the Hispanics, and people who are not accustomed to the city of Montgomery, who are moving here, and try to educate them on the different services that the police department has to offer, as well as other private entities in the city.
Great, great. Talk to us a little bit about the Castle Doctrine law and how that's changed.
Well, basically the law itself has not changed much. You're talking about the law pertaining to when you can use deadly force and when you can't. In the past, the law stated that a person whose home had been invaded by a criminal had to retreat first before using deadly force. Now the law basically states that if you can articulate that your life or the life of someone else is in danger, then you don't have to retreat. You can go ahead and protect your life or the life of your family and not have to worry about being criminally prosecuted for it.
Okay, so a person who, you know, in other words, if they have a weapon in their own home, that weapon should be used for the purpose only for protecting.
Correct.
And you have to be able to prove that that is the reason why you had to use deadly force.
Well, you have to be able to prove that you were in imminent fear of deadly force being used against you. There are other forms of actually protecting your family. Now, if someone breaks into your home and they're not armed and you can subdue them through other means than deadly force, then definitely that's what we suggest. But if you can articulate or you feel that your life is threatened, then this particular law doesn't require you to make an assessment of that and try to retreat first and then use deadly force is basically what I'm saying.
Protect yourself the best you can.
Exactly.
How about how will people